Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another informative episode of Stopping the Stigma, the show where we talk about mental illness openly and frankly in the hopes that by doing this, we will remove the stigma around it and improve our world as a whole. Today, we talk about our first audience-suggested topic. On my Ask.fm, I got the following question. There are two topics I would like to hear about: schizoid personality disorder and unhealthy obsession over things or even a person. Now, unhealthy obsessions over things or people can be linked to quite a few different disorders, so I won't be able to talk about that today, but I will be able to talk about schizoid personality disorder. All the information I'm going to give you is gleaned from a few textbooks and websites by someone without any notable expertise in psychology other than living with a few mental illnesses. Nothing I say here should be interpreted as medical advice or recommendations. Again, everything here is for purely educational reasons. If you think you or someone you know may be suffering from some of these symptoms, you should talk to a licensed professional who can help you out so much more than I can. The first thing most people think about whenever they hear a word starting with schiz is schizophrenia. Naturally, you might assume that schizoid personality disorder is some form of schizophrenia, and if you did assume that, you would be wrong. Schizophrenia is a psychotic disorder that is very misunderstood by our society as a whole due to myths and some bad portrayals in media. We'll talk more about that in a later episode. Schizoid personality disorder is a personality disorder, which deals a lot more with social interactions than a psychotic disorder, which deals with a detachment from reality. So what is schizoid personality disorder? According to the DSM-4-TR, people with schizoid personality disorder exhibit social isolation, emotional coldness, and indifference to others. It goes on to say things like, they tend to neither desire nor enjoy close relationships. They have few activities that provide pleasure. Abnormal Psychology by Ronald J. Comer says something similar. People with schizoid personality disorder persistently avoid and are removed from social relationships and demonstrate little in the way of emotion. So, at its most basic, schizoid personality disorder describes someone who prefers to be alone and is perceived as being emotionless. But it is so much more complicated than that. According to Comer, someone with schizoid personality disorder isn't really affected by praise or criticism due to the fact that they don't feel the need to be socially accepted or to form the relationships that most other people find essential. They tend to be very self-focused due to that fact and generally will live alone and will look for employment that lets them avoid contact with others. As with some other personality disorders, this doesn't make them dangerous or difficult to deal with, just different. It also means those with schizoid personality disorder generally won't seek treatment unless something else, like substance abuse for example, forces them to get treatment. Someone with schizoid personality disorder can live a fairly productive life without treatment, but they will miss out on the rewards of forming and cultivating relationships. It's actually not uncommon for someone with schizoid personality disorder to even get married, but their lack of emotions and preference for solitude can cause marital issues. The most interesting thing about schizoid personality disorder is that when the DSM-5 came out, it actually removes schizoid personality disorder from its list of personality disorders, along with paranoid personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and dependent personality disorder. According to Understanding Abnormal Behavior 10th edition by David Su, Daryl Wing Su, Diane Su, and Stanley Su, this was done for a number of reasons. There wasn't a lot of research done into these disorders. The threshold for what was and wasn't one of these disorders was fairly arbitrary and kind of up to the doctor examining them. And they all tended to occur with other disorders. So being able to define exactly what they were without relating it to another disorder was very difficult. This brings up the fact that a lot of mental disorders tend to co-occur frequently. People with PTSD tend to also suffer from depression. Almost any mental illness can have anxiety that happens because of it. The main difference being that with those four disorders, they almost exclusively co-occurred with other disorders. So defining what was because of the other disorders and what was because of schizoid personality disorder just wasn't really possible. So what does that mean for someone who is diagnosed with schizoid personality disorder, or who is never diagnosed but has quite a few of the symptoms? Does that mean that their mental illness wasn't real? Of course not. However, according to David Su et al., now the DSM-5 defines all of these as more of a continuum than a specific disorder. Anyone may have tendencies that make them more or less likely to form social and romantic relationships. The DSM-5 just describes it as personality traits like social withdrawal, social detachment, intimacy avoidance, restricted affectivity, and anhedonia, or the inability to feel pleasure. By defining it this way, they hope to be able to treat it more effectively while also addressing any other mental illnesses the person may have. But those personality traits do still exist and do still affect people's life. So even if someone isn't diagnosed with schizoid personality disorder, they still have a mental illness and they should still feel justified in seeking treatment for it, if they want. This is a perfect example that, despite what the media would have us believe, mental illness doesn't mean that you're dangerous, or even that you're incapable of living a completely normal life. Sometimes it just means that you view and interact with the world differently, and that's completely okay. Now, there is so much more information about schizoid personality disorder out there, but for right now, I hope that I've given a very, very basic overview of what it is, and I hope you all have a slightly better understanding of what it entails. That's all for me today. As always, if you'd like to help stop the stigma, please like this video to improve its searchability on YouTube and share it on social media. If you'd like to help me create more videos like this, you can consider becoming one of my patrons. Again, this is entirely voluntary, and a lack of patrons will never prevent me from producing content. Links for that is in the doobly-doo. If you have a topic or a question about mental illness that you'd like me to address in this series, there are many ways that you can contact me. You can tweet me, I'm @TrainerJody on Twitter, or you can just comment on this video. If you'd prefer to ask your question anonymously, you can go to my Ask.fm page. Links again are in the doobly-doo. Again, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time, all right? Bye-bye!